Paris at that time.
In about 1200?
About 1200-ish. We actually see a spike happening within around 1000 and about 1200. So that was another reason for people to actually leave this site too, was overpopulation during that time. Because if you imagine having to clear an acre of land for one person, that's a lot of land to farm. And if you're just practicing dry farming techniques, that takes a while. It takes a lot of effort. And so actually we see a big migration from the south coming this way for a little while. Because you see a lot of sites like Chaco and Aztec at that time also starting to migrate. And so instead of going down south into the Rio Grande or to Hopi and the West Pueblos, they decided to come north to Mesa Verde for a little while too.
I'm telling you, it used to be
to the north, and then finally that big migration south.
Were everyone farmers, or did they do different skills, crafts, whatever?
Yeah, definitely. Agriculture was their main staple, so everyone participated in it. Men were the farmers primarily, so you would see men actually taking the daily trip to climb out of sites like Spruce Tree House, which through hand and tool holes, which would have been little tiny, almost like cavities that they would have to climb out of, almost like rock climbing. Any of you guys go rock climbing? Almost that same thing. So men would have to do that daily trip up to the mesas, do a lot of farming, but women also played an important role in it all too, and that was actually grinding the corn. So in Spanish they call it metates, but in my language it's called ane. But it's a big stone slab, and they have the mano on their hand, and the women sit there, and they just grind the corn. And that was such an important thing that it took women about 2 hours a day to do it. So women, just imagine how strong you would be doing that, right? Just imagine your forearms just burning. Yeah. So everyone participated in agriculture. However, like if you have a really good harvest, for example, or if you have a lot of like time on your hands, you make places like Spruce Tree House here, for example. But you also have a lot of time set aside for crafts like pottery. So women practice pottery making, and men practice weaving textiles. So men provided things like turkey feather blankets, or for other goods like cotton textiles, of course, too as well. So not everyone was doing that. Yes.
You may have already answered this, so my apologies.
Yeah.
So, but to what extent, if any, do rangers or researchers still have access to actually enter the?
Right now, only I know the stabilization crew goes on there. Okay. So not even like a lot of groups from Pueblos too can come up this way to do pilgrimages, and they want to go here, and we had to tell them no because of that risk. Yeah. Yes.
I have a question about the corn. What type? I mean, did they boil it? Did they make breads? What
Yeah.
were the things they would do with
Great
corn
question.
then?
Yeah. So it's not like corn we think of today.
Okay.
When we go to like the supermarket, it's mostly sweet corn, right?
Yeah.
This would have been flour corn. So the primary use would have been to roasted it in some sort of way, roasted and dried it, and then a lot of times with that grinding, they would have made almost like a porridge out of it too. And so that would be like a little light breakfast kind of thing. But like at home where I'm from, we actually take it off the kernel, and we call it hakyane. And it's a soup, almost like a stew, and they just boil it pretty much.
Did they ever make it into like pancakes? Or
Yeah, they definitely would make it into pancakes. And back home too, we have blue corn varieties too. We call them tortillas, but they're pretty much pancakes too. They're pretty good. And if you put syrup on it, it tastes exactly the same.
What are those black things on the wall?
Oh, like the top right here? Mm-hmm. So if you look over Spruce Tree House, you actually see a lot of the soot. Thank you so much. So at Spruce Tree House, you see soot. So from all that smoke buildup, because people, you're going to remember, they're cooking, they're trying to keep their houses warm. So in that area, you actually see a lot of soot. But up here, that's all from moisture. So from rain. So you can almost think of like those gutters right there. If you get enough moisture, it's going to cause those little marks over time.
May I see those artifacts?
Yes.
Thanks, sir.
Cool. Yes.
What was the average lifespan of someone living in the
It wasn't long. It was about 30 years was about a generation. Yeah. And people were about 5'5". Men were about 5'5" on average, and women about 5'. So pretty short. And so if you look in those doors, those are not windows. Those are all doors. And so I had a group, I was doing an actual tour at Balcony House this morning, and someone mentioned, those are doors? I'm like, yeah, people would have climbed through them. Yeah, I'm like, you gotta imagine though, they're a lot smaller in size, but they're actually about 2 feet to 3 feet off the ground. Anyone know why they would actually be off the ground and really small?
Keep the heat in.
to keep the
We were there with you this morning.
Oh, yes, we listened. Yes. Awesome. Glad you guys listened.
Yeah, we got seen that.
So to keep the heat in, exactly. Yes, to keep the heat in, because if it's higher and if it's smaller, you're gonna be able to keep a lot of heat in. And they use mats to kind of cover for privacy reasons, and so it kind of helps everything kind of stay in there. But of course, they were not great. If you're here in the wintertime, you will understand how bitterly cold it is. Right now in mid-June, you cannot tell, but it is bitterly cold.
So with them being 5'5", how tall is like a story in those buildings?
We see roofs being about a little bit, about like 6 foot.
Oh, wow.
So as tall as me, about, yeah. Any other questions?
You mentioned Hovenweep earlier. Is that the same group of people as here?
Definitely would have been, they would have had communication with one another. And so for Hovenweep, I know those were seen, archaeologists like to say those are defensive structures because they're at such weird places, especially along cliff edges and around springs, so that they would have been defensive enough for people to yell out from. And then definitely you would have seen people yelling from these sites, not for like defensive purposes, but to ask to borrow a couple of sugar or something like that. So yeah, so people were definitely communicating amongst each other, and trading was definitely happening between Hovenweep and Mesa Verde for sure. And even intermarriage and different families within one group, two groups. Awesome. Well, if you guys have questions, please feel free to ask me. I'm gonna be up here for a little bit longer. So if you guys have questions, please feel free to ask me. Thank you.
Thank you.